Welcome to the CEN Show, a platform where we learn from the world community. I am your host, Rashaki Maskani, and on the panel this evening, we got Professor Rahh, we have Brother Mshinda. We have more than one guest this evening because we have the Level Set crew here. And the Level Set podcast is one of my favorite podcasts because all of the brothers on there is sharp individuals, professionals, and the commentary is excellent. I just really love to hear that show. So let me introduce the three members that are here. And then there's another member that may show up. I don't know, maybe it come or not, but we have Attorney Larry Fields. We got Dr. Charles Alexander, which is affiliated with our show, the CEN show in our organization. And we got the master teacher, Mike Jones, here. And all three of these brothers are excellent. And before we get to the actual topic of this evening, I want all three of these gentlemen to kind of introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. And then also Attorney Jerryl Christmas is the other member that's very active with the group. And hopefully he'll come in and we'll get some information from him. But before we start our topic, I want each of the members to tell us a little bit about themselves and also talk about the Level Set show before we get to the topic. So I'm gonna start off with we'll start off with the master teacher, Mike Jones.
Okay. Thank you and good evening. And it's both an honor and a privilege to be included in this conversation this evening. I guess I'm the senior member of the Level Set, just because I'm the oldest. Definitely not the smartest. That this is a crew that is both articulate, but more importantly, literate and informed. So my background is this. I'm basically retired, but I spent about 4 decades in active politics and government at the local level in St. Louis. I've been chief of staff and deputy mayor for development for the mayor of the city of St. Louis at one time, and then I also have been senior policy advisor for the St. Louis County Executive, and did a 10-year stint on the State Board of Education, and kind of over the last 10 years have written a column regularly for the St. Louis American, one of the leading Black newspapers in the country. So I'm both a political practitioner as well as somebody who pays attention to political philosophy and theory, because I think without theory, you get lost in your practice. So hope I can contribute something meaningful this evening.
Appreciate you. All right. Let's go to Attorney Larry Fields.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having us. I'm honored to be here. I'm an attorney in St. Louis, Missouri. My primary practice is in employment discrimination. I do a substantial amount of business transactions, in civil rights, and some personal injury. I've been here in St. Louis for the last 20 years or so. In that vein, I was born and raised here. Prior to that, I had a practice in DC that specialized in the same sort of general areas, and worked in a boutique litigation firm. So we've been here. That's Reader's Digest version of what we're doing. But with respect to the Level Set, that we started this is really the updated version, but back around 2016, we began the show with radio station 99.5 Foxy, which was an independently owned Black radio station. Shout out to Carlos Mayfield for keeping that thing going as long as it could. It's interesting, we're talking about politics tonight. Part of the political process is one that has seen the erosion of Black media ownership. And we spoke briefly about that, but he was a casualty. But our initial rendition was with a gentleman that was just a local guy that had a wonderful mindset that and was a literate guy that never had a voice. So we started the show post Mike Brown's movement. And our show has always been centered around solving problems. We do a great job in Black media of spotting issues, but we don't do a great job of providing any sort of solutions for them. And so it was a solutions-based show. The second evolution of that included as the mainstay, Reddit Hudson, who is a wonderful not just judicial, but justice reform advocate. I don't, pound for pound, I think he's one of the best in the country to do that. And Reddit was with us up until about a year ago, took some time off for some personal reasons, which is how we have the present formation of the show. Dr. Alexander is responsible for the name change to the Level Set. He was, we were looking for a new name, and it was his suggestion for the name, and that's how we got here, brothers.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Dr. Charles, are you there?
Yes, I am. I was just talking to Attorney Christmas, and he's joining us. He's joining us as well.
Good.
So good evening, everyone. So again, Dr. Charles L. Alexander. I'm a friend of the show. I'm a social scientist. I'm a practicing clinical psychologist, and I practice in Illinois, Missouri, and Indiana. Born and raised in St. Louis, and want to make sure I have a solid footprint in the Midwest, and I'm now expanding into the Southeast, moving to provide some service offerings in the Atlanta metropolitan area, and came to the Level Set initially in my capacity as an emergency preparedness specialist. And so I still kind of move and work in that space as well. So, and it was because of that space and that knowledge that I found myself well prepared for those 20 some odd storms that hit the Chicago area last week. And so we were able to brave those storms. But love working with both the Level Set and the CEN community because I love to bring good information to the community.
That's excellent. Now, do you have a service online for any of your clinical psychology work?
In terms of how to reach me to
I'm saying,
services?
do you do any work?
Like virtual work?
Yes.
And so, yes, I do virtual work. And then I also work with the entity called the International Trauma Training Institute. And so I have a course. I have a course running, a virtual course running on the with the International Trauma Training Institute now for maybe 4 years. And it is a course on cross-cultural competency for clinicians. And then I provide services virtually with a group practice that I have a joint venture with known as Touch of Wholeness. And it's located it is actually located in Illinois in the south suburbs of Chicago, but our licensures allow us to service folks in other states. And I can put that information in the chat.
that'll be good. Appreciate that. Okay, Attorney Jerryl Christmas just joined us, and he's the other member of the Level Set Show. Good evening, Jerryl. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Okay.
Good.
Well, we
Got
just
it, got it, brother.
we're getting an introduction, so we want
Okay.
to kind of know something about you and what you could tell us about the Level Set.
Okay. I'm attorney Jerryl Christmas. I recently came back from Africa. I changed my name. I'm now Kwame Christmas. So that's an update for all your listeners. Kwame means born on Saturday. So that's a new name that I picked up while I was in the motherland that I really like, that I feel like really fits me. And I am a practicing attorney here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. I do both criminal defense and I do a lot of personal injury cases. Prior to going in private practice, I did a stint in Washington, D.C. for 3 years as legislative counsel for Senator Claire McCaskill when she was serving in the Senate. And prior to that, I was a prosecuting attorney in the city of St. Louis. I actually ran for prosecuting attorney twice. And I'm a native of St. Louis, but I've lived in several other cities, Washington, D.C. I went to law school in Houston, Texas at Texas Southern University. Shout out to the HBCUs. And I did my undergrad here in Missouri. And so I'm excited to be on the show so that we can discuss the issues that are pertinent to our community, which is what we do on Level Set on a regular basis, is discuss the issues that are pertinent to the Black community here in the St. Louis metropolitan area, along with all across the country, along with issues that are going on across the country, especially when you look at everything that's happened in the last 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks seem like almost 3 years worth of incidents.
I heard that. Well, welcome, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody coming out this evening. I want to go to Professor Rahh and Brother Mshinda to see if they have any questions for the gentleman before we start on the topic. So, Professor Rahh, you have any questions for any of them?
Well, I appreciate what you asked, if I understand correctly. First, I want to say it's beautiful to have the brothers on and find out about the Level Set. And at the same time, I'm Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, where I taught there for 34 years in Black Studies. One of the classes I taught was Black Politics. Then I with former city councilman for the city of Compton, former Compton Unified School District Board of Trustees and Compton College Board of Trustees. And I grew up in Watson, Compton, and got a scholarship to play basketball. That's how I got through college. The first in my family to graduate. And the only brother on the team that graduated with his class on time. And so it was just a beautiful experience to be on with you brothers and get a perspective from people from different sets. Dr. Charles from Chicago and the other brothers from St. Louis, which is, very heavy, very political, and sometimes very active city with regards to their achievements as a city as Black people. One of the biggest populations of Black people was in St. Louis. And so I respect your experiences and your professional preparation, your research, your publications, and I'm going to try to keep up with it. And I don't have no questions right now. I just want to know who I was.
All right. Thanks, Professor Rahh. Brother Mshinda, anything before we start on the topic?
Yeah. So, Brother Charles, who came up with the name Level Set? You came up with the name Level Set. Is that a mathematical or some kind of scientific name? Can you explain that?
Not. I guess it's kind of mathematical, but just simply meaning that when we have critiques, when we have social or political or even historical critiques, we have to have a baseline. And so it's our goal to put whatever our content is, whatever our discussion is, we want it. We want to be historically, factually accurate and correct, and so our show is the level set. That is, we are establishing the baseline for the conversation and the content that we bring forth.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say I've listened to you guys on Saturdays. I try to catch your shows since you introduced it to the CEN show. And I must say I've learned a lot. I like to think that I'm a scholar in my own right, and I do my own research and try to stay abreast of what's going on, and there's still a lot to learn. But when you, like, for instance, when you talked about the color conventions and things like that, I'd never heard of that, and that was, so you guys introduced some, thought-provoking information that, at least for me, I find it very interesting. And not only do I take it in, I pass it on to others, so I appreciate you guys. Your work is not in vain, that it's being passed on to others, especially by me. My background, I was born and raised in Compton myself, and went off to school and graduated and all that, worked in the probation departments for a decade, about a dozen years, working with juveniles, trying to, get our young brothers and sisters in particular, on the right path. And I left that because of the fact that, it was time for me to go. As far as, I felt I'd done all I can at that point, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I've been in, I worked at secondary schools for a couple of years, and then I actually taught in post-secondary at the community college level, and I'm working in student affairs. I've been affiliated with that for the last 21 and a half years. Just a little bit about me. So, but I just want to say I appreciate you, brothers, your honesty and your direct commentary. And so I look forward to, the discussion tonight.
Thank you, Brother Mshinda. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for your continued support.
Okay. So, Dr. Charles, you didn't know that you was gonna host this evening, did you? So you're taking over for
All right.
our topic this evening. So it's political status of Black America.
All right. And so this is easy. I'm gonna make a quick assist. And so yes, that our topic is about the the political status of the Black community. Where do we go from here? And so to direct and order our conversation, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Larry Fields.
Well, that was easy for you, Doc. You got off the hook. Well, once again, thanks for having us. And when you look at this discussion and we look at politics, and I'm glad that we have two individuals that have, spent a lifetime working on these issues, and the professor and Mike Jones, the best definition for politics, the working definition, is the division of resources and power. That's the working definition that we have for politics. And so all of these individuals that try and herd you into believing that politics is about, red tape and so forth, those are distractions. Let's keep this as plain and as applicable as it should be. When we think of politics, we need to think about the distribution of resources, point blank, period. So if in fact, I'll go ahead and, throw out some numbers. Doc, when you look at government contracts, Black folks still only get 1.3% of the $1 billion of government contracts. Black firms, when you look at student funding, Black students receive 12% of the funding that white folks do. Those are just the divvy of the resources. So when you look at that and you ask me the question, where are we politically? Yeah, we're infants. When you look at the HBC funding, we're $12 billion short right now in just some of the Southern schools. Not all of them, but in the Southern schools. You look at healthcare spending, we get 72%. You look at the FHA loans that are giving. We are at a drastic reduction in the FHA loans that are financed and backed by the government. And why is that important? That's important because you have to come up with a significantly less amount to purchase a home. The loan is insured, so you don't have to pay PMI insurance. And when you look at the home ownership rate, Black families own, 44.2% of Black families own homes, as opposed to, 57% of white families. So, I mean, so when you ask the question about how the resources are divided, that's a big issue. So I want to go directly to Mike Jones at this point with respect to the question at bar. The question at bar is, what is the status of Blacks in politics?
Well, one of the things that has happened to me, I've been retired actively, kind of have worked full time in governmental politics in the last 10 years, but I spent a lot of time now thinking about it. And the column I write in American is called On Further Reflection. And so right now I write about what I think about what I thought. And what the statistics that Larry just read off are the empirical evidence of a certain level of dysfunction. And I've kind of learned to take a step back and say, what's the cause of the dysfunction? So you can either treat the symptom, or you can figure out why you even have the dysfunction. And we don't have a Black theory of the case. Larry and Jerryl are lawyers, and they've heard me say this 100 times. I think there are three things a lawyer takes into court: the facts, the law, and the theory of the case. The facts are going to be the facts. The judge will tell you what the law is. And the case, winning the jury, revolves around who has the best theory or story or narrative about what the facts and law mean. And both up into through slavery, Reconstruction, our politics was driven by a need to radically change the American governmental system to allow us agency and recognize our humanity. We superficially pulled that off with the Civil Rights Act, etc. And the assumptions that we made were if we were participating and could fully participate, it would ultimately alter our status and conditions. And I've decided that that's really a flawed assumption. And without a critique of the American system, without a critique of the project, without a critique of neoliberalism and laissez-faire capitalism, you can't adequately account for the Black condition. And so more participation in a system that's not designed to work in your interest really won't change the outcome. So we have more Black representation now than we've had at any time in our history at every level. We've been elected the president of the United States. And if you take the aggregate macro condition of Black Americans, there has been no change since the Kerner Commission. If you use the 1968 Kerner Commission as a baseline, a level set, so as it were, and compare the percentages of the metrics that we use to measure well-being, 2020 would look just like 1968. So the real weakness is we now have Black politicians and office holders no longer articulate a theory of change. And before we argued with each other about what the change ought to be. And now we're much more bought into the system, and it may work for upper middle class, college educated professionals, but it has not worked for the masses of Black people because we're basically working class people. And so I think our problem right now is we need a better analysis of what our condition is to come up with a strategy that will help us correct.
That is a very interesting point. Dr. Alexander, as we turn to you, the needs of the Black community have not changed from roughly Reconstruction to now. We still have the same needs. We still need housing, healthcare. The infant mortality rate is 2.5 times that of white folks, no matter what your economic condition is. I don't care how bougie you are. I don't care if you are a Silicon Valley Black woman. I don't care. We still have the infant mortality rate that is 2.5 times that of every white person. Talk to us a little bit, Doc, from your standpoint with respect to where you see politics and the Black politician at this point.
Well, I think it starts with the fact that many of us don't even understand. We don't have the working definition, that we don't work from the point of view of that working definition, right? And so that, to kind of go back to the question that Mshinda asked early in terms of what does it mean? What does level set mean? It means if we're going to have this conversation, we have to contextualize it, right? And so first and foremost, we have to know what the definition of politics, what that definition is. Now, to the degree that most of us believe that politics is actually the banter, as opposed to the allocation and utilization of resources, we lose a lot of people, right, off the bat, because we're stuck in the sideshow. And because of that, we don't engage the process, at least not independently. Most of us engage the process right about this time of year. And we're not really engaged in state and local politics. We wait until, we do politics on a 4-year cycle, and we're really only engaged in one aspect, and that's electoral politics. And in that space, we're really only concerned about the presidential campaign. And so if you're only engaging the process, in a 4-year time, a quarter of the time, you're just necessarily behind. And that's compounded by 400 years of oppression. And so we are literally struggling. Even this weekend, so my wife was on the call on Sunday night. And so when I realized that's what was going on, I sat near so I could hear, what the ladies were working on. And then, then I was on the call on Monday night. And, it gives rise to a great deal of mixed emotion. So on the one hand, I think it's amazing that we raised, collectively, $3 million in 24 hours. On the other hand, I am irate that we raised $3 million in 24 hours. If we could do that this weekend, we could have been doing this the whole time. And so we leave a lot on the table all the time, and then expect that the enemy is going to somehow bridge the gap. And so, you know, the way we work always causes me to think about, you know, a quote by George Jackson and Soledad Brother that I'll paraphrase, that, you know, essentially what he's saying. I mean, if the white man is who you say he is, you know, and you don't have a plan for that, either you don't believe he's that, or you don't believe in your plan, right? And so, but it's literally political suicide the way that we go about this thing. And so we got a lot of excitement right now. And the other thing that I'm fearful of is that, you know, even if she is to win, VP Harris is to win. You know, I think I alluded to this on Saturday on our show. It's just like Hamburger Hill. You do this heavy lift, you grab, you win, you know, you secure this thing you was fighting for. Once the victory is secure, you go sit down somewhere and don't maintain it. And then start this process up all over again in 3 years. And you just lose so much ground. And that's our part and our responsibility in the piece. That, you know, we can certainly see how the impacts of the oppression have impacted us. Okay, I'm not trying to discount that, but at the end of the day, if we could generate money like we generated this past weekend, it's no longer, you know, it is. We just cannot do that and then go back to, you know, in the next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, sometime, or if we looking in sometime in 2025, start talking about, you know, we need to do what the Jews do. We need to do what the Chinamen do. We don't. We just need to do what we can do. And that becomes the frustrating part. And that is kind of a snapshot of how we're moving politically now, and, you know, over a great part of our history.
So it sounds like we are reactionary, ad hoc moving, and you know, you can't survive like that. Jerryl Christmas, you're uniquely qualified in the fact that you worked in the Senate. As well as working in the Senate, you were a prosecutor. You ran for office. What is your take on the state of Black politics today?
I don't disagree with anything that's already been said. I think everybody brought up some excellent points. Like Mike said from the beginning, we need a theory of the case. We don't come to the table with a Black agenda. We coming to the table as Black people with a democratic agenda, and not having an agenda and a theory of the case for ourselves. We're only going to get what we demand. We've already seen this with Obama. We don't need the symbolism anymore. What we need is to be able to address the issues and the statistics that you brought up, Larry, and that needs to be part of our plan. And just like Dr. Alexander said, I'm frustrated too. I'm glad that we were able to raise the funds, but I'm frustrated about the fact that we raised these funds, and we could have always been able to raise these funds. You know, in our community, we have what, 1.1 trillion in our economy that we continuously give away, that we don't want to invest in ourselves. And so we really have to work as a people about investing in ourselves and moving away from this mentality of, you know, wanting to be liked by white people, because that's what our main problem is. You know, deep down, and I don't know if that is, and Dr. Alexander can comment on that, is that just part of the side effect of being oppressed by them? But, you know, deep down, we have this desire to just want to be liked and accepted by white people, as opposed to us doing what we need to do for ourselves. And we've lived long enough now. We've seen enough, and we have enough intelligence to know how we need to turn this around. And this is our opportunity to do that with this election coming up. We have to first and foremost be thinking about what is our agenda and how do we push our agenda. If we want the vice president to be the president, our whole thinking right now is about what is going to be in the best interest for us and how do we move her to do that, because she is not going to be able by herself to change these institutions. She's just the person sitting in that seat, but there's already an agenda set for the person sitting in that seat. And the person sitting in that seat also has to deal with the Senate, and they have to deal with the House of Representatives. And you just don't come in there by yourself deciding, what you're going to do without the cooperation of all those branches of government. And that's not going to happen either unless it happens, from the bottom, that we send that message and demand this is what we want. And so it's important. We're in a great time, I think, because we have the manpower, we have the understanding, we have the resources, and we have the opportunity to make things happen. We have the opportunity right now to make a difference, especially after we've already had one Black president, and we know how those 8 years resulted. So we know what we need to do coming into this. We know we need to expand the Supreme Court. At a minimum, we have got to go to 13 justices because we know we have too much power that is in too small a number of hands, and that we have to expand the Supreme Court. We have to look at ethics for them. We have to look at term limits for the federal courts. All of these things we know about the theory of the case that we have to look at going into it. And we have to understand that really we are not Americans. We are just U.S. citizens. We are African U.S. citizens. The whole concept of being American is not our concept, but that's what we're wrapped up in. And that's what makes it problematic. And as Dr. Alexander said, if we could raise this money this time, we could have long been raising this money to address our issues. On top of it, we also have to understand that this is politics. And anybody that knows anything about politics and about money, there's a tremendous amount of money in the atmosphere right now, which is why we're also raising this money. Don't think that somebody didn't spread some money to get these individuals to raise this money for us. That's why it's so much excitement in the political community right now, because there's so much money that is flush in the community, and so many operatives, so many political operatives can make so much money right now. So they're going to engage our community on fundraising. They're going to engage our community on turning out the vote. They're going to engage our community on all these different democratic principles that they want us to get engaged with, because the money is there to pay them to do that. And so you're going to see that from now all the way to November. But what we have to do and what we have to be focused on is what's going to be in the best interest of our people, not what's going to be in the best interest of the Democratic or Republican Party or the United States of America. What is going to be in the best interest for Black people in this country? What is going to be our agenda? What is going to be the top 5 things, the number 1 thing we're going to ask for, and we got to stand on it. We have to demand it. The power is in our hands. But and Larry, you much more of a you have much more knowledge of the Bible than I have, but I know it's a passage somewhere that says you have not because you ask not, and that's what the problem is.
Brother Kwame, Christmas, I appreciate that. Mike, Jerryl brings up an interesting point. Jerryl and Doc, we know if Trump wins this election, the democracy as you see it will no longer exist. After the calls that, I was also on the call on Sunday night, eavesdropping as well, Dr. Alexander, and the call on Monday night. Will we ever be able to go back to what we've known as the status quo politically? Not should we ever, but will we ever be able to do that?
Okay. I want to unpack a couple things
If you
that.
could address that first, Mike, and then go back to unpack those other things.
Okay. The answer for me is I'll say no, because the history of humans in this planet is that we evolve forward, not backwards. I mean, there are setbacks over time, but fundamentally, if you look at the demographics of America since the mid 60s, the America that Trump and MAGA America wants to go back to doesn't exist anymore. There's no there back there. That this is a different country with a whole different set of experiences, which is, I think, really at the heart of our problem. When I listened to Jerryl, there was when I listened to Kwame, I got to get used to the change. When I listened to him, he kept saying we and us, and that presumes, as you guys would say as lawyers, some facts that may not be in evidence. And I think the question we have to ask, is there a us? Is there still a us? Is there still a we? If I look at the history of the Black experience in America, we came over here as a disparate group of Africans from a lot of different places, with maybe not a whole lot in common. We got forced together through slavery, and we formed community out of that oppression. Then we got legally free, and after the Civil War, but we also were subject to American apartheid, Jim Crow. And for me, I started to think about that phenomena, and you could argue that the Black community, as we have understood it of a certain age, is a product of overt white oppression. We were in community because we had no choice. Now, I think we had a humane response to that, the humanity that we created out of that. So I'm not criticizing that. I'm talking about the circumstances of how it was created. We have not thought about who we have become post-civil rights. Now, American racism didn't change in America, but the country became socially more liberal, whatever that means. And then Lyndon Johnson did something else in 1965. He changed the immigration laws of America, and that eliminated racial quotas and opened the country. So, which is why the economy could sustain itself over the last 50 years, by the way. But what that means is this country right now, today, is 40% people of color, and moving more in that direction. And post-civil rights, we still had institutional racism, but you introduce the notion of individual choice. I would suggest that anybody my age and older, when you thought about what you were going to do, you always considered us. And I've come to realize that if you're 25 years old in America today and Black, you have a completely different experience than I've had at 75. And so when we start talking about us, I mean, the number, literally, when I look at the age of, you distinguished brothers on this show, I without asking, I know we all went to all Black schools, okay? Because that's the only, those were the schools we all went to. we've really literally got probably a generation and a half, maybe two, who have gone not only to integrated schools, but to predominantly white schools from a cultural standpoint. So I don't know how they've internalized and how they become social beings. I guess my point is, and the point I'm really trying to make is, we keep talking about us without examining our current conditions, or the conditions we've existed in the last 30, 40 years, and how that change in conditions may have changed how we collectively have come to think of ourselves, depending on where you stepped into that experience. So I even have a term for what I consider the modern Black politicians. I call them entrepreneurial politicians. Not that they're not Black, but they're just entrepreneurs about politics. And historically, Black politicians came out of some Black protest movement, civil rights, the Black student movement, etc. We're not producing that kind of experience anymore, and so we get a different kind of politician. We got 56 Black members of the House of Representatives. I think all but 3 of them are Democrats. And you can say they get less done for Black people specifically than the Black Caucus did in 1968, 1970, when it wasn't but 13 or 14 of them. Now, there's always been 435 congressmen, but how do you multiply times 4 the number of Black representation? And we literally have less collective impact than we have when we have 13. So,
and not to mention, Mike, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but remember that the Black Caucus is the largest caucus in the Democratic Party now.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Let me go to Dr. Alexander for that a similar question with respect to, do we have the players that we need? We have 61 of them. We have 61 in the Black Caucus. Do we have the players we need? And if we don't, what do we need in respect to the players? Everybody knows that in the NBA, everybody's looking for a 3-and-D guy. What do we need?
We need someone who is not beholden to the Zionist pact, and so that's a huge problem that we have right now, is that we have I believe it's called APIC, that they're supporting X number of members in the CBC, and those that they don't already have, under thumb, they're fueling their candidacies against. They're paying other people to run against them, essentially. And so, like in St. Louis, where you have, they're funding the brother to run against Cori Bush. In New York, they knocked the brother out in the primaries just this past spring. They make a run at anybody that would be considered progressive, and anybody certainly who would be considered sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. And so, since we have at this point that such a huge number of folks who are literally scared of not the Republicans, they scared of the rest of the Democratic Party, the alleged more moderate wing of the Democratic Party. And so
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Dr. Alexander and Kwame, and we want to open this up to questions after this question. Amos Wilson stated that Dr. Amos Wilson stated that a lot of the dysfunction in our community was because we were in no position to reward people, including our children, nor punish individuals. So, we couldn't punish individuals, and you can't punish individuals, you can't reward them. Is that currently still the case in Black politics in the United States?
That for me,
go ahead. I don't think so. I think we can. We have people in positions now, and people are being rewarded in politics. I think that is part of the problem. We are having a situation, especially in the Democratic Party, where people are being rewarded not to push our issues, and that's what's making it problematic. And if we move more as a unit, then we would be able to also provide some punishment. So I think we have the ability of doing that. As Mike said from the beginning, we're just not advancing our theory in order to do that. And our vote is still critical, and our input is still critical. But I think that ultimately, we just do not clearly understand the power that we have, and we lack leadership with courage. And as Mike said, very much so, and especially here where we are in St. Louis, we have a significant amount of entrepreneur politicians who are not politicians who came out of a movement, but politicians who are politicians for the necessity of their living. They need to be politicians in order to make a living, and they're living off of that salary. They're not in it for the community that they represent as much as they are in it so that they can have a livelihood for themselves, and that's what makes it problematic. But I think the fact that we have this mega white supremacist movement is pushing us more in the direction that we need to be in, having this struggle. We don't like the struggle, but the struggle is good for us because it makes us now key in and be more focused because we know that they are coming for us. So we are slowly waking up. I don't like how slow the curve is taken, but we are making that curve and making that understanding, which is why we having the conversations that we having right now. There are people listening that are being enlightened, and we are enlightening each other to move in that direction. And I think ultimately we will be able to move in a direction, but it will not come to after we have ultimately have some struggle, and probably more struggle than what we foresee right now.
Are there any, thank you, Kwame. Are there any questions that we could entertain at this point or comments? Professor, please.
Appreciate what you asked, but I understand correctly. First of all, I want to say excellent discussion, and everyone made some excellent points. Politics is in America, for us as a people, has always been a two-track system. One, the pursuit of electoral politics on local levels and state levels and on national levels. The other one is intergroup politics, where at one time Europeans used to choose our leaders, but now some of our leaders that represent pressure politics or pressure protests, like Sharpton, Jackson, a whole host of others prior to this. And they were very instrumental in challenging. A lot of them became victims of COINTELPRO, and if they stood up for Black people, many of them were indicted. Charles Diggs was the only one that went to Emmett Till's funeral, and a few years later he got indicted. Adam Clayton Powell, the first Black Power conference was in St. Louis. He gets indicted and thrown out. I think we forget that there's an ongoing process by which the national security of this country is not to allow us to become self-sufficient, because then that would weaken their hold on us and their exploitation on us. Most Black people just want to be American. That's what they were taught. I thought that I was very serious if any of you, when you was in school, was taught to pursue Black power or get active in your community and things of that nature. And even like Malcolm said, they told him he couldn't even be a lawyer, you know. Well, they didn't expect for us to be where we are today. We got that through struggle. It really meant slavery to last forever. But through struggle, we got out. And we got a long ways to go before we get to the point of some type of strong unity among us because of oppression and because of the miseducation, as Carter G. Woodson said, and because of the challenge of the Black household. You can't call them families no more because you don't know who the hell is in the house, you know, and how they raising them. But you know, very few raise their children to be conscious. You know, and they cheat. They think freedom is the choice between McDonald's and Taco Bell. You understand? I mean, that's their choices. You know, and the euphoria of eating the salt and sugar even makes them more relaxing. It's just like a high. You understand? And so it's very difficult to do the things that we want to do, but we have to give credit for the things that we have accomplished. We're one of the major voting blocs, maybe not independent Black politics, because we're diverse. You got one of the biggest, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, entities that really messes up, and that's the Eurocentric Christian movement that influences us. They took over our spirit. You understand? God gonna handle all of this. You understand? If it's God, this God's will. Even Muslims will say that Black Muslims, Farrakhan, them, you know, God let the white man rule for 600 years and all that. You know, I ain't into all that. But I am saying that politics, electoral politics, is war without violence. And war is politics with violence. And we as a people have to realize where our people are. And sometimes you have to go to where they are to bring them to where you are. And it's very difficult because as y'all have said, they spend big money in keeping our people divided, not just hating each other, fighting each other with drugs, alcohol, and guns, but also with their methodology of seduction. I mean, you got kids who rely on social media for information when we relied on people. And, you know, social media give you good information, but it don't give you the love and understanding that you got to have and the critique, you know, the fact checking and all that. But anyway, politics is very important. Even though we got some Black people or African people who may not even see themselves as African or Black in key positions, some of them do a good job of helping undercover because they know how the system works. And we don't, like when we was in the 60s, you know, a lot of Black people would just send some money anonymously to certain groups because they, you know, of the position that they were in. They didn't want to be known for it. And, you know, and I'm pretty sure Brother Mike Jones, who seemed to have the experience going back to all the rebellions we've had in this city, in this country. And we still have it. We got to give praise to the people. They come together in time of crisis and in time of need. Mike Brown and you know, the struggle over there, you know, ended up with Corey, that's Sister Corey in Congress, and a couple of city council people. But they had to burn up the city to wake up the people. You see? Same thing with Watt. I was in the middle of it. I did 45 days in juvenile hall. You know, they call it a riot. We call it a revolt. We started a festival. They gave us a bunch of money. We got jobs. We got things of that nature. Then they saturated it with drugs and alcohol. And brothers forgot the mission. We had a black movement during the 60s. People were, I'm black and I'm proud. And all the songs and the music and the dress, naturals and everything. All the civil rights groups and black power groups got to their height during the 60s. But COINTELPRO came. And there always was a COINTELPRO. That's just a modern name. But, you know, we always had collaborators with the white man. You know, they going to collaborate. All groups have collaborators with him. Because he punish them or reward them, as been said. But we've come a long way through struggle. It's going to be a long, what did Edgar J. Hoover say? We can't let a black Messiah arrive. And Messiahs don't just come in individuals, they come in groups. And you can think of all the groups that they penetrated, from Garvey and even prior to Garvey, with Eric Blyden and all of them, back to Africa movements and everything, that they have sabotaged. So my point is that sometimes I just have to keep hope alive and just look at the positive aspects and the hope that those that are in key positions, may they be a corporation, may they be their own business person, may they be a superintendent of schools, that we look up and get someone with consciousness, and that and they help us the best they can, because you're in a dominant white system that got their eyes on you when they see that you're rising, and they want to know what you're doing. You know, they pay big money for that type of black people. So the Black Caucus, I remember when Maxine Waters wrote a 1996, a Black agenda for America, not for us. The Black Caucus wrote a Black agenda for America. Farrakhan did, and the Million Man March. You know, they did some independent things, made them pledge to take in their families, do this and do that, and then said vote. You know, and you know, then they, I mean, it's just a struggle, brother. But you got to be optimistic. You got to keep on pushing, and you can't give up hope and think that it's helpless, because we've made a lot of strides. What, we got about 10 billionaires now. Yes, they're all in sports, they're all in concerts. Most of them got white women or white men. I mean, that's their business. But some of them are opening up schools. Some of them are sending money to Africa. Some people, you know, they do different things that we don't get the media for. So we don't think we're doing anything. They make you think that we ain't doing nothing, and that we ain't got nothing to work with. But we got some strong leaders like you, brother. You understand? I mean, y'all trying to make a difference. And we gotta, you know, lift that up. And you're using the instrument to reach a lot of people. And that's this social media instrument called a computer or whatever. So we you know, we've come a long way. You got a vice president, they call her DEI, diverse, huh? What was it? UDI?
DEI.
DEI, diversity,
Equity,
inclusion,
and inclusion.
and equity. No, but listen, they don't say she married to a Jew. You understand? They don't say that part. You understand? And what effect is that going to have on the Palestinians who's facing genocide? You understand? But Kamala comes from Howard, and she's a sorority sister. She knows she's messing around up in San Francisco. They got all kind of videos partying with black people. But she can do the best she can. Don't expect, no group is all unified, not even white people. They have to pass laws to make their people be unified, called treason. You understand? We can't do that to our people. You know what I'm saying? You know, they the ones that punish our people, and they reward them for snitching and doing things. But anyway, I don't want to dominate, but I'm enjoying the conversation, and it's just deep, brother. I've been in this since 1965, and woo, I've been in demonstrations. Natasha Harlan, oh man, Eula Love, going back to Leonard, the brother got shot in 1968, taking his wife to get to have a baby. We've been through this struggle for years.
Yeah, I remember that's the brother that Cochran represented. He represented
Yeah,
the family.
yeah. Me and
I
Johnny
remember.
be real close together. Me and
Yeah,
Johnny.
he was from the South, and I remember reading in Johnny's book how his wife was in distress, so he tied a handkerchief
White.
and and the police officers were so callous that they gave him, you know,
No, they reached in the car, shot him, and then
shot him.
the car lurched.
Right,
You know.
right, right.
I've been through it, brother. Been through it.
I mean, that's a tough one.
I've
Oh,
been, I
tough.
mean, and I'm just saying, you have highs and lows, but you got to always look for the good. I mean, when Black Books Bulletin came out with Hakeem Olajubuti and the Institute of Positive Education, we had independent schools at one time. Then charter come in. You understand? I mean, it's a different game out there. But we do have people like yourself that are conscious, and young people too, that are making moves that we don't hear about in different areas. What's the brother Marion Jackson? His father was a lawyer too in New York. It was the lawyer for the Black United Front. Lumumba. Yeah. I mean, all of them. You understand? He did the best. He was over there with uh, the brothers, African, I forget his name, but anyway, they were doing a lot of things in Jackson, man. They had set up a little farm, a little this, a little that. And we got different people. Black farmers got issues. All of us got issues. And before in the 60s, it was just about racism and segregation. Martin Luther King was fighting for inclusion and integration. It was a Christian movement for the most part. But we also had the Black Power movement. And as I said, the first Black Power conference was called by Adam Clayton Powell in St. Louis. And then, we have, 6 Pan-African conferences for Pan-Africanism? We be trying. But you'd be surprised at how the Garvey movement was sabotaged. And we just, sometimes we get naive to how vicious and serious this white man is about staying in power and how much his defense budget is to spy on us and other minority groups.
I don't think we have any idea what we're up against. I don't think we have any idea that we are in a war. The vast majority of us, we would have to have. I'm gonna quote Amos Wilson again. We would have to literally be out of our mind to wake up every day and to just voluntarily subject ourselves to the will of someone else without even trying to overthrow it. I mean, we are, the way we operate, we literally have to be out of our right mind. We do. Dr. Well, actually, Mike Jones, I'm going to ask you a question that normally is not directed to you, but I'm going to ask you a question with respect to consciousness and political consciousness. What would it take for us to put ourselves in a position so we have the understanding that even if we are sitting next to a white counterpart in a class in college, the business propositions that we are taught in university are totally different from us, as opposed to, for us from mainstream America, because what we really need to be doing is creating a system that makes us self-reliant, What type of consciousness are we going to have to engage in? How can we do that? You understand the arc of history.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to, excuse me, what I said at the beginning of the program, and Kwame has referred to it a couple times. We need a theory of the case that explains reality. What everybody, whether it's either via religion, via philosophy, has a way to explain the universe and reality and where they are in the universe and reality. I would say historically, we did that. If you think about Douglas's 1852 speech, what is the 4th of July to a slave, is really defining our reality versus the reality being American, a white person in America. Du Bois, in all of his early works, from Souls of Black Folks to Souls of White Folks, same thing. He's struggling with explaining the reality of the universe for us in some kind of comprehensive way. You've alluded to Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro. Fundamentally, in that, all deals with Black consciousness in some kind of coherent and organized way. And for me, we have, I kind of think of the model to understand our condition in America. You have to view us as a colonized country, and America is the colonizer. And at one point, we were involved in an independence struggle through slavery, Jim Crow. We were trying to liberate ourselves from our colonial master. Then America switched to a neo-colonial strategy with us, and that was civil rights and post-civil rights. In that era, what happens? The colonizer decide to give the appearance of some independence and sovereignty, and elevates the indigenous elites into a higher class. So all of a sudden, your best and brightest have a vested interest in their colonial status, and the masses of the population don't have the same interest. So you actually separate the potential leaders from the people. And since we don't operate with any theory other than what Brother Armand just said earlier, is God's will, and this must be the way, the way it's supposed to be. We don't think through that anymore, and we're not trying to produce in any coherent way and in mass something that we used to have a lot of discussion and argument in the 60s about what the Black theory of the case was. I mean, we didn't suffer from an absence of that. We never got to one coherent one, but we always were talking about it. And now we don't have that. So we're trying to figure out how to use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. And that just won't work for you. And
Hey, babe.
so I'd say that's why I think we're inefficient in our struggle or effort to elevate ourselves from our condition, because we don't have a proper diagnosis of our situation. So our proposed courses of treatment for our conditions are always inadequate. And I wish I knew how we corrected that. And
Mike, let me just add this,
Yeah.
because here lately, but this is the first time in a political cycle where the terms "God's still gonna be on the throne" have really stirred up a level of disdain in me that I just can't. I'm almost compelled to walk out of church when I hear that. Because we're in an existential situation right now, and God was on the throne when Jesus was sent to the cross, but he still suffered. God was on the throne when God told the children of Israel, "Now I'm gonna give you this land, but you're gonna have to fight for it." So not only are you gonna have to fight for it, I want you to go and do a recon, come back and tell me what you see. They go and do a recon. They came back and reported to Moses. Man, those men look like make us look like grasshoppers. That's all right. Well, I want you to kill every guy. I want you to kill everything over there. Now, I'm not advocating killing. My point is that we're going to have to work our way through this. God's not going to send a magic rainbow down here to save us. We're in this, and we're going to have to fight our way through this and work our way through this. I listened to Netanyahu, Benji's speech today, and there was absolutely nothing spiritual said about what they were going to do in Gaza. Nothing. And you're not going to be able to combat any of this with the, he still refers to Trump as president. So that lets you know where they are. And it also lets you know what we're up against. Doc, how in the world should we attack this from a mental health standpoint? What needs to be our approach in dealing with this day and day, not just to succeed and thrive, but to accomplish the goals that are in our best interests?
Well, to literally, we have to level set, and so to borrow from Dr. Joseph Baldwin, better known as Kobe Cambone, what we're looking at is psychological misorientation, and so our frame of reference is off, and so our frame of reference is not, rooted in our African identity. Our frame of reference is not it's not rooted in independence at this time. Our frame of reference at this time is literally kind of scattered, and clearly what Baba Rahh said earlier, this is not an absolute. It's a critical mass. So we have a critical mass that's doing the work, and we got a critical mass that's lost. But even within that critical mass, we're still all vulnerable to long-term effects. And so one thing is, acknowledging that we are experiencing this psychological disorientation. Jerryl, Kwame is very clear. I am not an American. I'm a United States citizen. We still got scores of Black folks arguing and debating that. This system tells us day in and day out that we're not American, because to be American is to be white. And so so somewhere between the obvious and the experience, we should be able to understand that we are not that. So what Kendrick say that what did he say? They not like us, or we not like them, or what have you. And so we got to be in that kind of space.
But
and
the Constitution's supposed to protect me, Doc.
Again, we have to, so first of all, even we got to learn the Constitution. So as citizens, we got to learn the Constitution. Many of us don't even, we wasn't even thinking about the Constitution until Sister made the movie 13, right? And so we got to learn the Constitution, and we got
Well,
to learn what we can utilize in the Constitution. Go ahead, Baba Rahh.
yeah, we already know that the, the religious aspect of this movement of our people. We've had too many scholars to dispel the biblical text as just a Bible means books, and the Holy Bible means a collection of stories. These are stories. I mean, walking on water, feeding all the people with one fish and all. I mean, come on. And our people, just like these people following Trump, our people follow Jesus, and they really think that Jesus is curing them of cancer, curing them, doing this, doing that. And I'm not saying religion don't have a major role, teach you moral ethics and values in certain ways, but to just be that gullible it's wow. I'm not saying people shouldn't go to church. It's a good communion, all that, and you get to see people and you go picnics and you do things. That's a good thing. Churches was a refuge for us at one time, but they weren't the modern day church that's dealing with the pursuit of funds and money. Those churches really were our welfare systems and our safe havens and places where we could go and get food and get this and get that and get a shelter and hid us from people. That's a different. This church of the day is about prosperity, the gospel of prosperity. And I'm not trying to get nobody not to be religious, but then the other aspect of it is that you'd be surprised, and Dr. Charles could tell you that oppression lasts for a long time, man. And and when you don't have a family base that behind closed doors, teaching you how to go out in the world and get all you can to help yourself and others. I mean, that type of indoctrination. I mean, our families, my mother and father never listened to Malcolm X. Never even, they just didn't do it. They had Kennedy picture on up in the house, or Martin Luther King. And, we from Watts, we ain't about to let no dog, he'd be a rug if he come at us, I mean, that was a different mentality, nonviolent. But now we realize the King in his movement produced some very beautiful things in progress because they open up a dialogue. It's just like people mad at Obama, but Obama gave the people hope, inspiration. Thousands of them came out. He inspired the young people to go to school. He inspired people to do things, not necessarily fighting white folk, but fighting for themselves to be better people.
But the issue is he gave the banks money. He bailed
Well,
out the car. He bailed out the car industry.
he ain't did nothing. They told it. He ain't had no choice. He had no choice.
But the same blight that existed in our neighborhoods pre-Obama exists now. And I'm a fan of Obama.
But like you said, he was a Democratic president.
Wait,
Wasn't black people president.
but brother,
he left us with a tremendous bill. A tremendous bill.
But Larry, I suggest this. Our problem, and I'm gonna say it's our problem, is America is fundamentally anti-intellectual.
America's a criminal enterprise.
On top of that, it's also a very anti-intellectual country.
Well, yeah.
And Americans are probably the most actively ignorant people in the advanced world. And we happen to live in America, and we're a product of that education system. So we intellectually don't have no contradiction. Two things excuse me, two different things can be true at the same time. And that is, he did these good things, but the reality of the system that he's operating on is always go limit. So that you have to have an understanding of what's possible in the system that you live in or exist in, and then figure out how to maximize them. Now, I would suggest when we were until the 60s, where we really were part of the segregated Black community, our culture taught Black boys and girls what they were going to have to do to be okay as Black adults.
But the
And the
culture,
whole culture,
Mike, let me ask you this.
yeah.
But did the culture teach us what we had to do in order to serve this system that we spoke about earlier? I think you spoke about earlier, as opposed to serving our own communities?
I would say it was still geared around making sure we were all right. Because I would argue that when I was growing up, I would say when you guys were growing up, Black people, Black adults talked about us and them. So there were things that you needed to do because of them. So you had a sense of the distinction between you and America, to Jerryl's earlier point. We've lost that dichotomy. We don't teach that anymore. That's not endemic. So they grow up thinking they're integrated into a system that they're not integrated in. None of us on this call grew up believing that. Because
And see, Mike, that's the dilemma. None of us might be, but I just left a whole group that's given a fundraiser for a politician that's being sponsored by AIPAC. So, I mean, they're throwing their money away because they're not going to be able to get anything done. But I left a whole group our age that really believe that they're a part of this and integrated into the system.
that's the miseducation of the Negro. I'm sorry. I mean, that's exactly, literally, what that is. I got a story, joke story I tell to make the point. This is back in 1900 when a nickel and dime was a lot of money, and this older brother worked in this rich. He was the locker room attendant in this rich white man's club gym. And he was about to retire, and he had to teach this young brother the routine that was going to take his place. So as the white men would come out, they'd ask him, he said, John, I got a nickel and a dime here. And that's when a nickel and a dime was money. And if you tell me which one is the most, you can have it. And the brother would say, I need to think about that. He maybe rub his chin. He said, you know what? That dime is new and shiny, but that nickel is bigger and heavier. I think it's the nickel. And they give him the nickel and walk out laughing. So the young brother watched this for a while. Excuse me. And it started to really bother him, aggravate him. So he came to the older brother and said, man, I don't know why you doing this. You know damn well a nickel ain't more than a dime, that the dime is the most. And the old brother said, son, calm down. Sure, I know a dime is worth more than a nickel. But if I take the dime, the game is over. So what looked like he was being taken advantage of, he was hustling them every day. And so you got to be able to see, is this you reinforcing your own oppression, or you doing like High John the Conqueror, or you taking advantage of the institutional situation to lighten your load? So I'm not sure we know how to play the game to make it work for us and keep the kind going, because that's all it is. And we don't believe we got to do that anymore.
Correct.
We've forgotten how to hustle because we've become kind of bourgeois and integrated into the system. And
Well,
there
I
was
think-
a time.
And in some cases, Mike, it looks like that the con has become almost who these people are. And they're forgetting that. So yeah, they're still staying in those subservient positions, but not with the full power and understanding
Right.
that our forefathers had.
And that's my point.
Yeah, and you know, let's keep in mind, we mentioned the Colored Convention earlier. The Colored Convention, in their preamble and Constitution, laid out a framework that we needed to operate in. One of the things that I found fascinating, they said, don't you refer to anyone outside of our race as Mr. or Miss. Call them by their first name. Second thing is, we ought to be out of the, you know, if you are working a subservient job, you need to work your way out of that. But we have been so inculcated with Gone with the Wind that we're aspiring to do that. And then we are finding individuals that are in those positions that will tell you, don't nobody want to work. Well, no, they don't want to work in that position. And those are honorable positions. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I am not besmirching those. But we have got to, but I can tell you that if you put that same time in and you hustle together and open up a corner store, you'll make more money. You'll have more of your life. You'll serve more folks. And we drive right past all the opportunities in our community to go and serve someone and fight on a job that refuses to recognize your brilliance. And you continue to make them rich. Doc, look like you were about to say.
Some people do that, but all don't.
No. I'm not saying that all of us do. Far too many of us do.
Yeah, but Motown grew, Johnson and Johnson grew, BTL grew. We used to have Black Enterprise magazines and things of this nature. What is the issue? Is we trying to get as many Black people to be conscious as we can.
Mhm.
Some don't want to be conscious. Some got mental issues, drug issues, alcohol issues, sex issues, confused. We work with those that want to move in a certain direction. White folks just had a big civil war. They had been in World War I, Spanish-American War. The Spanish were white at that time. And, they fight all the time. Germany was white folks fighting white folks. Jew is not a race, it's a religion. And so they German Jews, you understand? They fighting and killing 6 million of them. And we can go on through the history. And then we get upset because we can't convince some Black people to think the way we think. We are diverse people. Africa is diverse. We have so many different languages, so many different lifestyles. The earth is diverse. It's the white folks make you think it's segregated because he's a minority. And he got bombs and weapons to check people. You understand? Most people on the earth just want to live. They just want to enjoy. And this guy got mentality, he wants to dominate. He wants to rule. And he wants everything for himself, like Trump. Trump is the epitome of white mentality. That's their basic mentality. to rule the world, even if you're destroying it through climate change, even if you're destroying it through war, even if you're destroying it through technology. They don't care. You understand? Because they don't have the same compassion and natural humanism that we've had. J.A. Rogers, in his book Superman the Man, he said white boy was on the train with his daddy, and he looked out there and he saw some black people just in the grass drinking and just smoking weed. And his daddy said, look, they look at what they doing. They lazy, they just drinking and not going to work and smoking dope and doing all that. And one white boy looked at that and said, well, I want to be like them. You understand? Because it's you know, you don't want the pressure. But
I purchased a book this week, something that's titled something to the effect that rest is a revolutionary concept.
yeah. I mean, but
Because to your point, we've been inculcated by these individuals that have made capitalism, second to nothing, and that's exactly what they do.
reading but that's not our nature.
No,
It's not our nature. The white man didn't fight his way into Africa. He didn't fight his way into America. You understand? The people received him as guests, treated him well. That's where Thanksgiving came from. The first thing he built was a fort. You know, he turned gunpowder, black powder into gunpowder, a rope into lynching, electricity into electric chair. He got movies out Star Wars. He ain't even got there yet. You understand? I mean, this is a sick guy, but some people use him as a model to emulate.
And that's the psychological misorientation.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that we struggle with. But Larry, when you were mentioning about kind of getting your own thing or starting your own thing, people kind of putting things together, and that's that's much more situationally determined than what we actually know sometimes. And so again, I'm from St. Louis. I grew up in what's considered a suburb of St. Louis. It's called Webster Groves. I live in North Webster. North Webster is where the black folks live. We can't open a corner store because at some point in the mid 70s, the city council rezoned Webster that you can't have any rezoned North Webster, indicating that you can't have any commercial ventures. And so
I can believe that.
Yeah. And so the only place, Larry, that you can do in North Webster, the only place that you can have any commercial activity is just that little brief corridor between Marshall, really kind of coming up to First Baptist Church. So that strip mall that you see, right?
Sure.
So you see the industrial spot across the street from the church, and then from the church on down past the gas station at Marshall. That's the only place. Those are the only places in North Webster where there could be commercial activity. And so there used to be stores in North Webster, but no more. It's been zoned out. Now, how do those things get zoned out? When people stop engaging in the political process. And so, so yes, there's a lot of things that contribute to that, but that is kind of one of those fundamentals. And so
let me
we gotta have people to understand the complexities of it.
Yeah, they're very, very complex, but at the same time, we've always had those issues. If you look right now, you can look in Africa, you can look in Harlem, you can look in Chicago. Well, Chicago's I think is a little different. We've been elbowed out of commercial spots. So you find the brothers that are in the flea markets. You find the brothers that are set up on the streets. But like many, my parents were staunch Baptists, but I can tell you without fail, every Saturday night they listened to Elijah Muhammad, who had a radio show on, and then we had a pastor that was very, you know, with the fourth grade education that was very self-sufficient. And this is what I learned. You know, my mother told me if you show up on the same corner at the same time every day with the same product, you'll be able to build you a business. It may take you forever. And so we have always operated, we've had candy women. I can remember going to Hammond, Indiana, during the summers where my grandmother lived. And there was a lady that lives in the middle of the block. She was the candy lady, you know, and she made a living doing that. We have got to at the same, remember epigenetically or consciously that we've been able to operate in despite
Yeah.
of what the
And I'm
state.
not saying that that's not possible. I'm saying that inflation dictates that you're not about to make no living selling candy out your house.
You're right. But
That's what I'm saying.
well,
And so when we look at the dynamics of what has gone on in a lot of different places, part of it starts with our. I'm not even talking about the disenfranchisement in terms of like I'm not. I'm talking about the willful decisions for us not to engage in the process. And so
that's
when
part of what we talked about earlier
so when
with
we
the state doing it purposefully.
And so the state is going to absolutely do what the state does, right? So we know we live in a situation of state-sanctioned violence, and that includes economic violence. But I am also talking about when we willfully disengage from the process, it makes it much easier for the state to do what it's going to try to do anyway, which is why we have to fight. So we have to fight because that's really all we got. We 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 are our version of the Palestinians, of the Palestinians. They gotta fight because of people trying to kill them and take whatever it is that they got. So we gotta fight, right? And so one of the things that we struggle with, as I said, talk about the psychological misorientation, but also like the other concept of the other people. I like elements of the Stockholm syndrome as applied
Right.
to us, right? And so Stockholm syndrome, in short, is the hostages have affinity for the captives, right? So there's four key elements in the Stockholm syndrome. A, the hostages develop a positive feeling toward the captor. Got us. No relationship exists between the hostages and the captor. There was no relationship between us historically until this relationship started, and we are the descendants held bondage by that same relationship, right? And refusal by the hostages to cooperate with the police and other government authorities. Because we identify with our captive, we are complicit in our isolation. We have no desire to engage, like with Brother Patterson and Robeson and Du Bois. They go in 51. We charge genocide. We don't want to do that, right? We ain't trying to do that no more. Malcolm went, United Nations. We charge genocide. No, so we don't want to engage international bodies on our behalf. We don't want to cooperate with other governmental bodies, on the continent or in the diaspora, so that we can create a measure of leverage that would allow us to function, because we have a belief in the humanity of the captive. They ain't gonna do that to us. They killing us every day.
So for everybody who won't remember what you just said, I'll shorten it and summarize it with Harriet Tubman. She said, I freed 1,000 enslaved people, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they had just realized that they were enslaved, and that fundamentally what enslaves you is your inability or unwillingness to resist. And George Clinton probably said that better than anybody else, and that is, when you free your mind, your ass will follow. So our fundamental problem is that it's how we interpret our reality. And I've always taken the position that the issue really isn't how do we win. Your issue is your capacity to resist, like Sisyphus with that rock. So oppressed people prevail when they resist. They don't have to win. It's the resistance that basically gives you the victory. So you may never overcome, but as long as you're in resistance, you ain't oppressed. You're just dealing with a fool that's stronger than you. Because it's the resistance that liberates, not necessarily your physical service.
Therein lies our victory. The resistance.
Right. The resistance.
And not only that, I used to think that just not liking white folks was black. But when I got into a value system, I realized loving black people is what I should be about. Coming up in the streets, half the people we victimized was our own people. You understand? Because we lived in the neighborhood, we knew how to get away. And then I learned that, you have to be conscious of the European. Oklahoma and other black towns. We had Soulville, we had all kinds of black towns, people pulled themselves up. European burned them down, bombed them. But the point is that education is the key. But education from a realistic condition, as Dr. Jones was saying, and Dr. Charles, education. But it's very hard when the people that's doing the education are educating you not to be self-determined and how to get through the system. When you got kids, you're going to make sure they go to college. You're going to coach them. You're going to monitor their grades. You're going to be on top of it. But when I was coming up, my mama never saw me bring no homework home. You understand? Never asked about it. Just go to school. So we're making progress. It's incremental. But we're doing a lot. I think it was Morehouse or either Howard graduated 2,500 people from their school this past year. You understand? And that's a monumentous thing. Now, I ain't saying they all gonna be black conscious. We started the Black Consciousness Conference in Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach in 1979. Now it's the Black Unconscious Conference. So they're too busy talking about rap, hip hop, and all of that. Versus when we're talking about unity, organization, goals, non-transactional progress. In other words, you're not trying to get somewhere and want something back. If it comes back, you accept all reward for the risk you're taking. But at the same time, your whole mentality is to help your people. You understand? We have entrepreneurs. They try. We have black soda company in Compton called Maricola in the 60s. Tastes better than Pepsi, better than Coca-Cola. But they didn't have the commercial apparatus and the advertising apparatus. So, they had to go out of business. We've had a lot of strong businesses. Banks, savings and loans. But if we don't go there and live in the community, it's hard to tell black people to stay in their community. You understand? I live in Compton, but I know a lot of black professionals who won't live. They live in integrated community. Even Faircon live in an integrated community. You understand? When we was all together, doctors, lawyers, and all that, They were role models for the kids. But now, you know, we got community college right here in Compton, and we got 20% black male. 20% black male. They'd rather stand in front of a donut shop and ask for $1 than to go get financial aid, get a trade, and things of this nature. I don't blame them because they're a product of this system. And we escaped it because we chose not to be a victim. You understand? You have to choose to be black. You're American by habit and addiction. But at the same time, when you say you African, that's a choice. You wear your dashiki, people say, wow. You understand what you're doing. You understand? They expect for you to come in with a shirt and tie. Yeah, man, it's a struggle, but I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. As far as
And
I'm concerned,
I
we got
agree
the white man
wholeheartedly
on the
with you.
run. He's
I
on the
agree.
run. We got him surrounded.
Yes, sir. I agree wholeheartedly, Prof. We're going to close out at this point. We're going to have closing statements from everyone that would like to do so, including those that we haven't heard from tonight. So, Kwame, you're back. I know you had to take a little hiatus. But what are your closing thoughts as we summarize this issue of the state of the black politician and black politics?
I think that the moment that we in right now is critical. And I think the fact that we are all coming together the way we are right now, in light of the situation that we're in politically, when you think about everything that has transpired over the last 3 weeks, you know, it was only 3 weeks ago that the debate occurred when we started to have the conversation about there needs to be a Democratic replacement. But if you had talked to me the day before the debate and told me that we would all come together unified behind the vice president as the presidential nominee, the way that we've come together, I would not have agreed with you. I would not have believed that that would have happened. So that tells you the promise that we have and the reason why we are in this moment for this reason. And so we have to really think about what our purpose is and try to live up to our purpose. Because regardless of what has happened in the past, we control what happens in the future. And the conversations that we're having now are very important conversations to how we move in the future. And all hope is not lost. God is on our side. I can feel it in my soul. And I know that we are going to be successful, but we have to believe it and we have to stand on it and we have to continue to fight the way that our ancestors have always continued to fight. If you look at from 1619 to where we are now in 2024, we're just talking about a little over 400 years, which is a small amount of time in the whole continuum of time when we talk about our history and we know what we're capable of and what our people are. And we just have to find the strength and the courage. You know, my favorite quote from Dr. Martin Luther King is that you start dying the day you become silent about things that matter. And these are things that matter. And we have to make sure that we're not silent about these things that matter in this time and day and this period for our people, because we can make it happen for us. And only it will take us in order to do that. As we know, no one is coming to save us but us. And that's what we have to understand.
And in the words of Bill Cosby and Let's Do It Again, we're going to have to put some money in it. Dr. Alexander, closing statement.
Again, you know, same thing as Saturday, I will offer to the people, you know, as something that helps you to level set, helps you to have a grasp of where we are and what we could do. I recommend, you know, Dr. Neely Fuller Jr., the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. You know, I think this is a tremendous resource. And also, as we talk about, you know, we made some references to our educational system and exactly what we don't get out of it. Of course, it's always a good read to to crack open the miseducation of the Negro is an even better study than it is a better read. So once you get it, you got to keep using it. So you got to use Carter G. And then another uh, that kind of helps us to break down the obvious because we clearly cannot believe, Audre Lorde has told everybody tells us, you clearly cannot believe that this guy is going to educate us. And so to kind of break down the structure of the educational system, another great book is The White Architects of Black Education, Ideology and Power in America, 1865 through 1954. We have to level set so that we understand where we are, how we got here, and where we need to go.
Absolutely. Mike Jones, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna attach my comment to Charles's last point, and Socrates said Plato has Socrates saying that the unexamined life is not worth living, and I think we have to some way figure out not look for answers, but to learn how to ask the right question. Because when you don't know how to ask the right question, you can never come up with the correct answer. So you get the question wrong, the answer's got to be wrong. I would suggest that our problem may be in our inability to ask the right question. I think what our ancestors intellectually got was they understood the question, which is why their answers are so clear, coherent, and why they held up so well over time. I think we're lost because we don't know how to ask the questions. And I heard somebody say once that if you talked about the Hebrew slaves or Israel when they got liberated from Egypt, if you look at the distance between Egypt and what was Greater Palestine, which is where they were headed, it probably takes about 2 weeks to walk that far, maybe. But they were lost in the wilderness for 40 years, and I would suggest that the issue was it didn't take 40 years to get Israel out of Egypt. It took 40 years to get Egypt out of Israel. And our problem is the amount of America that is now resides in us. And this fundamental confusion that we have is a result of not understanding that reality. And there, you're our kind of spiritual advisor, but that's why Moses couldn't go over to the promised land, because he spent too much time in Egypt. So until you can raise up a generation that didn't experience obviously what we've experienced, our minds would never be free enough for our asses to follow. And I think that's fundamentally our problem.
I was just about to go to my frat brother and he blinked off the screen. Professor, you have any closing statements?
Like I said, I'm optimistic. All these issues we facing will come to pass. Conditions create consciousness. So, we got a multitude of issues. I mean, we're in a situation where there's so many issues we're facing, from AIDS to, gay movement taking over and having a heavy influence in the Black community. The whole concept, so many kids do not live with their mothers and fathers. We have to, understand those issues. But even with all those problems, because other races have them too, and other groups have them, we are still on the move as a people. And I just think that there's a difference between power and influence. Power is you're able to do it. Influence, you got to get somebody else to do it for you. It's one thing to say, I know somebody can help you get a job. It's another thing to say, hey, I'll hire you. And that's a different. But we on the move, man. I see so many positive movement. I mean, the George Floyd movement was heavy. I mean, I see how people coming together in time of crisis, but you need a structure to keep them focused, because we've been trying to get the issue of police brutality and legalized killing of us for years. You understand? And make it a national issue, but as soon as they give them that settlement, the parents gone, and and whoever got the money gone. And they stopped the issue. The issue was a national issue. It wasn't just their issue. And so we see our brother problems as ours. You understand? And we want the best for all our people. And at the same time, life is short. Man, the clock don't go backwards. I'm 76 now with arthritis, all kind of issues. I can't make the set like I used to. I used to go to meetings all day, all over, drive everywhere, Pasadena, Long Beach, take a group of people. Nowadays, I'm on the computer. You understand? But it's still, with dialogue, I learned a lot tonight. I'll put it in my toolbox and educate people like Mshinda was saying. Spread the knowledge around. Check out Level Set. Check out Education Network. Take advantage of the tools that we got. But I'm very optimistic. I see cultural movements. I see Black people doing some positive things toward each other. And I just gotta be that way. That way, I mean, what one Black person said, I wouldn't know how to be if I wasn't Black. It made me a better person. You understand? And that's my position. But what some people say, I wish I wasn't Black. I don't. I'm glad I'm Black. And I'm glad I'm Afrocentric in consciousness. And I share it with my family, I share it with whoever listens, and I listen to them. And so I just want to say I'll be listening to Level Set, which Rashaki's been encouraging me, and get some more of y'all knowledge and spread it around. And hopefully we reach somebody. That's the game.
That's the game, brother. And we certainly appreciate those kind words. I'm gonna be very brief. I think after Sunday and Monday, we can't put that genie back in the bottle. I think the fact that we understand our power and it did not frighten us. We are on to new inroads. And so I think the most prolific thing in the election cycle has already occurred. That being the fact that we understand our power. Now, I was upset on Monday for a little different reason. There were 53,000 brothers, and we only raised 1.4. That's not even $100 a man. So, I mean, if we would have each given $50, we could have, doubled that. But that is a start, and it was an ad hoc start. So now we know what we can do. We know what we can do. There's no excuse, and the future is bright from here. And that was one of the biggest reflections of us taking our own agency that I've seen in modern times. And so I'm encouraged. I'm thankful. I'm going to hand everything over to our host. Thank you for having us today, man. Your discipline is unparalleled. But thank you.
Well, I appreciate what everybody does here. It's a thing of what I would call beauty, because what else can we be doing with our time than what we're doing? And I was listening to what Mike Jones said in Jerryl Christmas as far as the political working theory. And that's something that's like an action, not only have an understanding, but implementing an action to bring forth about what you want and what you want to happen. And with that, with the significance of people getting behind Kamala Harris, and we have to bring forth what we want. And there's things that we could do, and we could talk about it later, to start developing political consciousness for our youth. So there's things that we could do. We just have to put action plans together and implement them. And that's one of the basis of Community Education Network. Is not only bring forth education, but to implement educational type activities and plans for people to come up in being politically inclined and doing things that they should be doing to bring forth what we need as people. So I'm just in awe of all of you brothers doing what you do, and I'm definitely right there. So we just gonna keep doing what we're doing. So next week we have Asa Allah coming back. He's a brother that I've known for some years, and he's in Atlanta, and he's into nutrition. So the topic of that talk will be killing our families in the name of love. And he's going to be talking about nutritious type things. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to listening to this past Level Set show and getting what I can get. And, sometimes I want to put clips on there, extra clips, to point out some highlighted information that you guys bring forth. So it's a beautiful thing. I appreciate you, brothers, and let's do it again.
All right.
Absolutely.
Professor
Thank
Rahh, anybody next Tuesday?
Yeah, Dr. Shereen Montgomery, she's going to come on and talk about mental health services and the challenges of Black mental health issues.
Okay, excellent. That's your daughter. Excellent. All right. So each one teach one in Conscious Corner. Everybody have a beautiful one.
All right.
Good night.